Over the past few years, the world has witnessed an alarming rise in geopolitical tensions. From the ongoing war in Ukraine to growing threats in the Middle East, the possibility of a global conflict, what some are calling World War III, seems more plausible than ever before. Today we're diving deep into the most critical flashpoints shaping the future of global security, and how these could directly impact the United States and its allies. Let's start in Eastern Europe, where the war in Ukraine continues to rage. In 2022, Russia launched a full-scale invasion of Ukraine, and despite months of brutal fighting, the war shows no signs of slowing down. Russia's expansionist ambitions are clear. Its desire to reclaim territories and impose its influence over former Soviet states has been at the heart of this conflict. Since the onset of the invasion, the United States and NATO have provided critical military support to Ukraine, including advanced weaponry like HIMARS rocket systems and, more recently, long-range missiles. But here's the thing. By giving Ukraine the ability to strike deep into Russian territory, President Biden's administration has raised the stakes considerably. On the one hand, these weapons help Ukraine defend itself against a much larger aggressor, but on the other, they're seen by Russia as direct provocations. In fact, Russian President Vladimir Putin has warned that any escalation in Ukrainian strikes on Russian soil could prompt a response, one that might involve nuclear weapons. Putin has already made it clear, if NATO continues to support Ukraine, Russia might resort to nuclear escalation. This is no idle threat. Russia's nuclear strategy has evolved, and now the use of nuclear weapons, even in a limited context, is something Moscow may consider if it feels cornered. A single miscalculation could result in catastrophic consequences, with no clear path for de-escalation once the nuclear threshold is crossed. Let's take a deeper look at the nuclear rhetoric coming from Russia. In a meeting with Russia's Security Council, Putin proposed updates to the country's nuclear doctrine, suggesting that aggression against Russia, even from non-nuclear states, with the support of nuclear states, could trigger a nuclear response. Essentially, what Russia is saying is that if Ukraine, supported by NATO, continues to hit Russian territory, Moscow could interpret it as a joint attack by NATO and Ukraine. This opens the door to a dangerous escalation, one that could involve tactical nuclear weapons being used on the battlefield. Russia's threats of nuclear escalation are not just bluster. The Kremlin has long relied on the doctrine of nuclear deterrence to protect itself, but the reality is that even a limited nuclear strike could spiral out of control. Once nuclear weapons are used, there's no predicting how events will unfold. The West, especially NATO, would be forced to react, and the resulting chain of events could pull the world into an all-out war. Of course, NATO's role cannot be ignored. In the wake of Russia's actions in Ukraine, NATO has moved to expand, bringing Finland and Sweden into the fold. This expansion directly challenges Russia, as these countries share borders with the Russian Federation. For Russia, NATO's growth is seen as a direct threat, a sign of Western encirclement. Russia perceives this as a form of horizontal escalation, meaning the war could expand geographically and involve more countries. And with NATO membership comes a mutual defense agreement, meaning an attack on one NATO member could trigger a war involving all members. Additionally, Russia has deepened its relationship with China. Though China has no direct involvement in the Ukraine war, its growing military and diplomatic ties with Russia add another layer of complexity. The two countries' combined influence in Eurasia could challenge Western powers, especially the US, in ways that are still unfolding. Moving south to the Middle East, tensions are also reaching a boiling point. The Israel-Palestine conflict has been ongoing for decades, but in recent months, the situation has escalated dramatically. After Hamas launched devastating attacks on Israel, the ensuing conflict has drawn in regional players, with Iran offering support to Hamas and Hezbollah. Iran, with its nuclear ambitions, has made it clear that it's willing to support proxy groups that challenge Israel's security. This poses a direct threat to Israel, a close ally of the US. If this conflict spreads, it could draw in US military forces in defense of Israel. And, as we saw with the Iran nuclear deal and tensions in the Strait of Hormuz, the US has significant interests in preventing Iran from gaining further regional influence. If the Israel-Palestine conflict spirals, it could involve other Middle Eastern powers like Saudi Arabia, Egypt, or Turkey. These alignments could draw the US into a broader regional conflict, one that could extend beyond the Middle East into a global war if major powers get involved. All of these tensions, whether in Ukraine, the Middle East, or elsewhere, contribute to a growing sense of global instability. Miscalculations, whether by accident or design, could lead to a full-scale war. The consequences of such a conflict are unimaginable. From the use of nuclear weapons to widespread economic collapse, the global community is teetering on the edge of disaster. We are living in a time when a single misstep could tip the scales. Whether it's a NATO response to a Russian nuclear attack or a regional conflict escalating into something larger, the risks are ever present. While it's impossible to predict exactly what the future holds, one thing is clear. The world is facing a period of unprecedented geopolitical uncertainty. The potential for a global conflict, one that could involve the US, Russia, China, and other powers, is real, and it's up to world leaders to tread carefully. But as history has shown us, even the most cautious of decisions can lead to unexpected consequences. Thank you for watching. Be sure to subscribe and stay informed as we continue to analyze the state of global politics and what it means for our future.